Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, brothers and sisters in Islam. Welcome to my show, TMA Talks. This is a podcast show hosted by the Muslim Apologists, and I'm your host, MENJ. Today we have a guest from Indonesia, very close by to Malaysia. So her name is Ibu Etika. So welcome to the show. Maybe you can introduce yourself so that our viewers may know who you are, what specifically topic of our discussion is today.
Oh, all right. Yes. My name's Etika, or just call me Ibu Etika. And then my background is I used to be an English lecturer. I've been interested in learning the Abrahamic religions since 1992. The first time I learned is about Christianity with the Old Testament and the New Testament, of course. But then in 2016, I met Rabbi Tovia because at that time he was assigned in Jakarta, Indonesia. So I learned Tanakh and Judaism from Rabbi since 2016 to up to 2019. So, but I've been learning a lot from him about Judaism and
Yes,
Hebrew Judaism.
that's very good. That's very good, Ibu Etika. Yeah. For those viewers of mine who are not familiar with the culture in Malaysia and Indonesia, the title Ibu is not is a title. Okay, it's not part of Ibu Etika's name. Okay, so her real name is actually Etika. Okay,
Etika.
so Ibu Etika is the equivalent of madam. Okay, in the English language.
It's
Just as
Indonesian
a
style. Indonesian style.
yeah, Indonesian style of saying madam. Alright, if you want to translate it into English, yeah, just to enlighten our
Yeah,
viewers.
right.
Okay, so anyway, let us go on with the topic of the day, which is basically we are going to talk about how the Christians misuse the Old Testament text or the Tanakh, okay, as the Jews call it. Okay, so Ibu, maybe you can tell us the verses which Christians often use, or maybe we can start with why Christians are so adamant in using the Old Testament to justify their theology.
Yeah. In Christian perspective, they say that they claim that there are about hundreds of prophecies from Tanakh, so that the New Testament is actually fulfillment of the prophecies stated in Tanakh or in the Old Testament. But then it is not in the Judaism perspective. Why it's so different? Why they have so different opinions? Because of the translations. The translations. This is the problem of translations because language is not exactly the same. The first simple thing that we know Tanakh in Judaism is Tawhid as Muslim, that we know uh, when we read the text of Tanakh, in the text of Tanakh, there is no even Trinity. But then when they change into, they translate into the Old Testament, then they become, the Trinity is there, you know. So we are going to see which one is right, you know. But it's easy for us to see which is more supreme, the original text or the translation. It's just easy. And this is the first problem. The second problem is usually the Jews learn because it's their own holy books. The Jews will read the Tanakh in context, you know, part by parts. Like when Rabbi Tovia, he taught me how to understand Tanakh. He would start from the first verse, second verse, and then when it has to refer to something, other books, then he will refer to Talmud or to Midrash, the Jewish references. But Christians usually they just pick out one verse out of context. This is also the second reasons why. Then they don't even understand when I have a debate with a padri, with a priest in Indonesia, we have offline debate. I asked him the first one. I asked him first one of the Yeshayahu 9. Even he said, "What's the people who? I mean, can you explain the people? The people here refers to who? What people? To who's to whom? What people?" He said, "I don't know." I mean, he honestly he said, "I don't know." You know, even he's priest. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So Christians, they are actually
yeah,
indoctrinated with these verses. Like I think you're familiar, you're aware of this. Yeah.
yeah, he knows exactly verse 6, but even he doesn't know verse 1, verse 2. And as Rabbi Tovia said, that 99.99% Christians do not understand Hebrew, yeah, which is the original language
Yes,
used.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. Yes,
that's a
correct,
problem.
correct. Yeah, yeah. I think that's actually the issue with Christians because when they try to interpret the Old Testament or the Tanakh by forcing eisegesis, okay, eisegesis meaning the interpretation of existing doctrines upon the text, which does not say anything about those doctrines. So this is where the problem actually, begins, right? So okay, so let us go into the crux of the matter. So basically, we are actually going to discuss several verses, right? I'm sure you're familiar with them. So these verses are the common ones, which are Isaiah chapter 7 verse 14, Isaiah chapters 9 verse 6, Isaiah 53. Oh, the Christians, they love to use Isaiah. And then Psalms 22. So which one would you like to begin with, Ibu?
I think it's easy to begin with the Yeshayahu of 7 and Yeshayahu 9 because it's very close.
All right.
Chapter.
Okay. So let
No.
me bring it up on the screen. Okay, and then we can discuss these verses. Okay, hang on. Yeah. Right. Give me a moment.
Or you can
Okay.
give it later. First, it's okay, no problem, because I'm going to see
Yeah.
to tell the background first, to tell you the background a little bit.
Yes.
Because
Okay. Sure. Okay. Okay. Go ahead and tell us what is the background to these
all right.
verses.
Okay. So in order to understand Yeshayahu 7 and 9, you have to know the background of the kingdom of Israel. Without knowing the background, it is impossible to understand the verse, the meaning or the message given by Yeshayahu. You see, after the death of Solomon, about 900 before century BC, the kingdom of Israel split into two, a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom. A northern kingdom is the name of the northern kingdom is Israel or Ephraim, while the name of the southern kingdom is Judah. Yeah, it's Judah in English, Judah. So named after the tribe that dominate the kingdom.
After the 12 tribes of Israel, and Judah is the one of the tribes, right?
There will be war between Judah and kingdom of Judah and kingdom of Israel. Okay,
Yes, correct.
so
Yeah.
and then is Yeshayahu 1 to 10 actually is a vision of Yeshayahu during his time, because he lived during the reign when the kingdom of Judah. So in Tanakh talk a lot about the Judah than the Israel, the southern kingdom. So during the time of King Judah kingdom, Yeshayahu lived during the reign of King Uzziah, and then his son King Jotham, and then his son King Ahaz and King Hezekiah. So Yeshayahu 7 is the time when during the reign of King Ahaz. So maybe in with the King Uzziah only several years, and then King Jotham, and then King Ahaz. King Ahaz is not a pious king. So at that time, the story begins with, this is not the according to Christians, this is a prophecy of the the fulfillment of this prophecy is fulfilled in Matthew 1:23, right? This is so this prophecy in Isaiah 7:14 is fulfilled in Matthew 1:23. The first one of this. So this is about Syrio-Ephraim war, and we can see that
Okay.
with this first one. When Ahaz son of Jotham, the son of Uzziah, was king of Judah, King Rezin of Aram and Pekah son of Remaliah, king of Israel, marched up to fight against Jerusalem, but they could not overpower it. This is the introduction, and then the following verses is talk about how it happens. So with this first one, we know that it is about the war between the Judah, the Judah. The capital is Jerusalem. At that time, two kingdoms. There is the kingdom of Aram or Syria. At that time, the king was Rezin, and the kingdom of Israel. At that time, the king was Pekah bin Remaliah. Together, they work together to destroy the Judah. But logically, Judah will not survive. Would not survive, because even with Israel at that time, in the previous phase, 128,000 soldiers were killed by the northern kingdom, by the Israel kingdom. So that's why Ahaz was so afraid at that time. That's why they asked Yesaiah, who is the prophet, and Yesaiah asked God, and God gave the sign that will give the sign that don't worry about the two kingdoms because Judah will survive, will win the battle, will win the war. We are going directly to the first which is claimed by
Yes.
Christians. It's actually there are many things to
Okay.
talk, but
Yes.
because time is limited. Okay, in Isaiah
Yes.
7:14, Laken yiten
Yes.
Adonai hu lakem ot. Hineh ha'alma hara beoledet ben vekarat shemo Immanuel. So the translation, the Jewish translation here is, therefore the Lord of his own shall give you a sign. Behold, the young woman is with child, and she shall bear a son, and she shall call his name Emmanuel. So this is the Jewish translation. We see the Christian translations. Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son and will call him Emmanuel. So the problems, yes, in translation, whether it is they deliberately change the translation, we don't know, but let's see. The word ha'alma here means in Hebrew meanings is a young woman. Yeah. Alma means young woman, ha'alma, so the young woman. And the Christians translate into the virgin. The virgin, not the young woman translated into the virgin. And then the word hara means at that time she has been pregnant. She's pregnant at that time. The young one is with child. But then the English translation, the virgin will conceive, change into future tense. Yeah. Because at the time when Josiah speak to Ahaz not to be afraid, is that at the time his wife, the young woman, his wife, this young Alma, he pointing his wife, is pregnant and shall bear a child, and the name is Emmanuel. But the translation in Christians, they change Alma into the virgin, which is in Hebrew mean Betula. Yeah. And is with a child in Christian's translation with will conceive. Because the meaning of the sentence in Isaiah 7:14, 700 years before Jesus was born, at that time, Isaiah's wife is pregnant. She was pregnant for the second son. Yeah, this is the context. But then the Christian changed the translation from Alma into virgin, and then from with a child into will conceive. Yeah, so that
Yeah.
make
So
it
basically the Christian understanding of this verse is because of Matthew chapter 1 verse 23, right? Because that is what the gospel author wrote. He said, because this is a prophecy that has been fulfilled, behold that the virgin shall be with child, and then it alludes to the verse in, yeah, is that correct?
right. So that's because it's just like make adjustment. I mean, to adjust the virgin. Actually, there is no virgin in Judaism perspective. Will have a child. I mean, it's in that case, it's Alma is the young woman. That's right. That there is a prophecy in the Isaiah 7:14, but the prophecy was already fulfilled. You know, in the following verses, it says it is said that cream and honey he shall eat when he knows to reject bad and choose good. For when the lad does not yet know to reject bad and choose good, the land whose two kings you dread shall be abandoned. So those two kings are indeed defeated by the Judah kingdom. Yeah. So how? So you just we can read in Melachim Beit in 2 Kings, 2 Kings 15 to 29 and chapter 16 5 to 9, and in Divrei Hayamim in Chronicles. Yeah. First Chronicles chapter 5 26. Oh yeah, so this is I forgot that the Chronicles and the Kings in Tanakh talks about the history of Israel kingdom from David. And then what Isaiah talk about is a piece of the history during his life. Chronicles, and you don't know, never read Chronicles and Kings, you will never not
Kings.
you
Yeah.
won't understand what the
Yeah,
message that
this is actually how the Christians manipulate the scripture, because they impose certain things upon the text, and totally take things out of context. This is exactly how they do it to the Quran as well. They go and take things out of context and they manipulate it. That is why they distort they distort the view of Islam in the Quran. So this is what they do the same thing to the Tanakh. You know? So so basically, you are telling us that Isaiah 7:14, chapter 7 verse 14, and Isaiah chapter 9 verse 6, they are prophecies, true, but they are not referring to a future event. They're referring to an event that has already happened during that particular period of time.
Because after Emmanuel, the second child, the second son of Josiah, who knows the, the difference between the bad and the good, then you know they will the Judah will defeat the enemies. Yeah. How can we know? Of course, in Kings and Chronicles, says I stated the chapter just now. And then even we can ask Christians with the first is that the lands will be abandoned. You know, at the time, the land whose two kings you dread shall be abandoned in Isaiah 7:16. And we can ask the Christians which lands of those two kings were abandoned during Jesus' lifetime. You know that these simple questions, but they will not know because there is
Because they're taking things out of context. That is why, because they only see a certain verse. That verse, they think that verse refers to Jesus, and therefore that is how they interpret the meaning. They don't see the overall story. You see, so
yeah.
that's the
All
problem
right.
with the Christians. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
So
right.
anyway,
So,
maybe Ibu, maybe we can now move on to the next verse. Isaiah 53.
okay, Isaiah 53. There are problems also in understanding the meaning of the words and translations. See, Isaiah 53 in the Jewish perspective talks about the messianic age. This is a prophecy when the Messiah comes, and uh, that the Gentiles, the Gentiles, non-Jewish non-Jewish tribes,
Yeah,
non-Jewish,
the non-Jewish, yeah, the non-Jewish peoples. Yeah.
they will be shocked to learn that the Jews who they have looked down upon and mistreated are in fact the servant of God. They realize that the God of Jews, that the God that the Jews worship is the true God. This is the prophecies, their prophecies. So why then the Christians claim this is about Jesus? Let me see the problems. First problems in understanding. First in understanding the meaning of the words in Hebrew, which is different from the meaning of other in their own languages because languages are not exactly the same. So singular, the third singular pronoun in Hebrew can be used to refer to collective nouns. Yeah. Here, he, like in Hosea 11:1, when Israel was a child, then I loved him and called my son out of Egypt. So I called my son out of Egypt. My son out of Egypt is not one person. It's a collective nouns, which is the nations of Israel. And then another example in Exodus 4:22. Then say to Pharaoh, this is what the Lord says: Israel is my firstborn son. My firstborn son is singular, doesn't mean that it's only one person, but the collective nouns of the Israel nations, the Israel people. This is the problem of understanding. So they think that all the use of he in Isaiah 53, they think is one refer to individual. They don't realize that in Hebrew it can mean collective nouns. Yeah. So this is
Yeah. So actually, the story of Isaiah 53 is talking about the suffering of the whole people
suffering,
of Israel, right?
the
Yeah.
Israel people. Yeah, the suffering
Yes.
of
Yes.
Israel.
Yes. It's not an individual. It's a collective group of people, right?
Yeah, right. And then
Yeah. Yeah.
the problem of understanding the word Zerah, because in Isaiah 53:10, it is said that uh, if he admits guilt, he will live to see physical children. He will see the his offsprings. And then Zerah here, when we say the Christians, is Jesus never married, never got married and not children, but they will say, oh yes, this is the meaning, not the real meaning, but metaphor means his followers, the Christians. But it is wrong because the meaning of Zerah in Hebrew only in a physical forms, in
Oh
physical.
my.
Never,
Yeah, Christians, they will always do mental gymnastics. I mean, like you said, the word Zera means physical, but then they say it's metaphorical. This is not something new from the Christians. They always do this.
physical followers. So they
Yeah.
misuse the meaning of the word
Yes.
Zerah.
Yes. Exactly. So this actually stems from basically from ignorance of the Hebrew language, right?
Yeah, it's lack of knowledge of Hebrew language, it's lack of knowledge of Judaism. And
Exactly.
then, yeah, like the meaning, for instance, the meaning, the servant is suffering because of the evil done by others. Because not for them, but because of the evil done by others, not for them as an act of vicarious atonement, you know. So it's they misunderstands the meaning, or maybe they know, but we don't know. And then the problems of the translation. In Jesaja 58, there is the word lamo at the end of a sentence. It's easy because we will make it quick. So at the end of sentence, there is the word lamo. Lamo in so we see the Jewish translation. From imprisonment and from judgment he is taken, and his generation who shall tell? For he was cut off from the land of the living. Because of the transgression of my people, a plague befell them. So a plague befell them means lamo in that sentence in Jesaja 58, which is the last sentence, the last word in the sentence. Lamo means them. Lamo means them. But
Okay.
the Christians changed the word them into third singular. By oppression and judgment he was taken away, yet who of his generation protested? For he was cut off from the land of the living, for the transgression of my people he was punished. So he here, actually, it refers to they, to the plural, not singular, but they make it into singular, to look like Jesus. Yeah. And there are about 18 words. The word lamo are used in Tanakh. 18, 18 words are used in Tanakh for lamo. All are translated in a proper way with the meaning of the third plural. Only in this first third singular. For instance, I give an example in Yesayahu 48:21. Yes, also the word lamo, and they translate correctly lamo. They did not thirst when he led them through the desert. He made water flow for them from the rock. He split the rock and water gushed out. They translated in he led them in a proper way with in the third plural form, but only in Yesayahu 53 verse 8 they translate into third singular person. Is it
I
here?
see. Okay. Yes, it's appearing on the screen. So yeah, so I think the viewers here can see how the translation has been manipulated, right? So the Jewish translation and the Christian translation of the same verse are totally different. Okay. So of course the Christians they have an agenda in translating it this way. So that is why it is different. The Jewish translation is based upon the Hebrew text. So yeah, of course it's more accurate than the Christian one. Okay. So yeah, so any more last words you would like to comment about Isaiah 53 before we move on to the next verse?
Yeah. Okay. On 59 also there are translation, in the word bemotov, yeah. Yeah, actually there are also in 53:9 if I'm not mistaken, but later it's too long to talk about. But there are another translation
Yeah.
in Isaiah 53. The word
So it's
bemotov.
okay.
He gave
Right.
his grace to the wicked and to the wealthy with his kinds of death. Bemotov means in Isaiah 59 to 53:9 is plural bemotov, kinds of death, but Christians make it into singular as his death. Another some of Bible with the capital letters H, which is actually there is no capital letters in Hebrew, right? So this the Yesayahu, I think 53 talk about the prophecy in Jewish perspective, the prophecy in the Messianic age. When the Gentiles finally shocked to know that the God of the Jews are the true God. That they are right. This is the main message of Isaiah 53. All right. So are we going to continue with?
Yes. All right. Okay. So yeah, thank you for the explanation, Ibu. So maybe we can move on to the last and final passage which Christians often use, which is Psalms 22. I think this is their favorite text as well. So maybe you can tell us the Jewish perspective of Psalms 22 and how Christians have manipulated it, and what is the actual understanding of Psalms 22?
Yeah, Psalm 22 in the Jewish 22:17, but in the Christian Bible 22:16, because verse 1 and 2 in Christian Bible make it into one. And then this verse is actually it's about poems written by King David. Like first one for the conductor on the ayelet shachar means it's like a musical instrument, and in first two there is a very popular verse which is Eli Eli lama sabachthani, yeah? Eli Eli lama sabachthani, Eli Eli lama sabachthani, which is
Yes,
very
yes,
close to Matthew in Matthew 27:46, if I'm not mistaken.
yes,
77:46,
yes. Yeah, that's allegedly the last cry of Jesus. But of course, we know that in the other gospels, Jesus said things differently. But this is the
so
most
Eli
famous
Eli lama
cry from Jesus.
sabachthani,
Eli Eli
Eli
lama
Eli lama
sabachthani. Yeah.
sabachthani, but in the Hebrew text Eli Eli lama azaftani, my God, why you forsaken me? So there is not sabachthani but azaftani. Yeah. So and according in the Hebrew perspective, in Judaism perspective, there is no word sabachthani whether in Aramaic, neither in Aramaic or nor in Hebrew. There is no word as sabachthani.
So basically, you're telling us that the gospel writers, the gospel writer of Matthew actually transcribed the cry wrongly as well.
Yeah, from the David, but then change from azaftani to sabachthani. Yeah. And then we go to the central, which is the Psalm 22:16 in the Christians and 26:17 in the Bible. So I'm going to read the Hebrew text. Ki sebabuni kelabim. Kelabim means dogs, yeah. Adat meraim hikibuni kaari yadai veraglai. Veraglai. Here, the translation you can share also in the screen. For dogs have surrounded me, a band of evildoers has encompassed me like a lion. My hands and feet. Sorry, so my hand and feet. It should be feet. And then Christian's Bible. Dogs surround me. A pack of villains encircles me. They pierce my hands and my feet. So the word kaari, which must be translated into like a lion, in the Christian Bible, change the translation into they pierce. So, but in other verses, the Christians translate Ka'ari in a proper way. Yeah. For instance, in Yesaya 38:13, I think I have shared to you. This the word Ka'ari here, the word Ka'ari here, uh, translated properly. Like the more I make myself like unto a lion until morning, the more it breaks all my bones. From day even to night, with thou make an end of me. So the word Ka'ari here, in Yesaya 38:13, is uh, it's translated in properly, properly translated with Ka'ari. Also other in other verse in Numbers 24:9. Yeah, there is also the word Ka'ari here. Yeah, in the third form, in the third words. They crouch, they lie down like a lion, like the king of peace who dare roast them. Blessed are they who bless you, accursed they who curse you. So it is clear that the Christians manipulate the words ka'ari, which the meaning must be like a lion. Ka means like a preposition. This is a phrase, sorry, not a word. Ka means a phrase like, and Ari means lion. So you can just check in the Hebrew dictionary. The words Ari means lion. So Ka'ari like a lion. And they translate correctly in other verses. Only in Psalm 22:17, they manipulate the translation, which must be Ka'ari like a lion, into they pierce my hands and feet. See? This is
Yes,
in the
yes.
perspective. I think
Yes,
it's
I can see very well. I think the reason why this happened is because for them Psalms 22 has a theological significance, whereas for the other verses that you have mentioned, which uses the same word as in Psalms 22, they kept meaning the same because for them these verses do not have any significance. But of course, unfortunately for them, due to this inconsistency, people will eventually pick it up. I mean, there's this English proverb which says, "Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you." So basically, this proverb means that you can fool the people some of the time, but you cannot fool people all of the time. So this inconsistency, of course, people will eventually wise up to it, especially for those who know Hebrew and the story behind it. The Jews, especially, they know their text very well. So this is why the Christians, they cannot get away with such manipulation for long, right? So anyway, maybe a few words, Ibu. Thank you very much for your elucidation today. So maybe you can, as we are already almost at the end of the show. Maybe you can sum it up. So from this, what is the takeaway that we can we can get from these verses that these Christians try to manipulate, and maybe perhaps you can share your wisdom on that matter. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is important for us to learn holy books from the source. Yeah. When you learn Tanakh, then go to the source, the Jewish people, to the Judaism followers. When you want to learn the Quran, then you go to ulama. When you want to learn the uh, Christian Bible, then you go to priests. Because the most authoritative, the most authoritative person who can interpret the Tanakh is the Jewish, because it's their holy books. And they refer to other sources, which is also their traditions, halakha, targum, which is very important. And then when you learn from the translation, there are many problems, because they don't know. You will not know there are many manipulations in translations. And the problem is, the biggest problem is then, by taking one verse out of context, which is, how can you understand verse 9, for instance, while you do not understand other verses? Only one verse but you don't understand other verses. Yeah, this is common. So they know exactly, for instance, verse 14 of Isaiah 7:14. But when I ask the first one, what is Aram? What is the not Israel? What is the Judah? They don't know anything. They don't know anything. Most of them, they don't know.
They won't know the answer, because for them they just focus on specific verses. They are taught to study these verses and memorize these verses, and then they totally ignore the context, and then they just quote that verse by heart and apply it to Jesus. So that is where the problem is, actually. I mean, the Christians are supposed to follow Jewish traditions, but you know how the Christians are now today. They don't follow any Jewish tradition. So anyway,
Yeah.
thank you very much, my viewers, for watching this podcast, inshallah. So I hope that you have gained something from it. If you like this video, please do not forget to give a thumbs up. Please do not forget to subscribe to my channel. Inshallah, we'll see you again in the future. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.